Welcome back to our second lesson in the course Words That Shape Our Worlds. Probably before we even had words or language, we certainly would have had a sense of space. We would have had a sense of something that was here and something that was there, far away, someplace else. Our sense of place is a multidimensional, complex construct used to characterize the relationship between people and spatial settings. It is a characteristic that some geographic places have and some do not, while to others it is a feeling or perception held by people, not by the place itself. It is often used in relation to those characteristics that make a place special or unique, as well as to those that foster a sense of authentic human attachment and belonging. And in fact, in many cases, what we'll call that space, that place of special human attachment and belonging, we frequently call that home, and that is an absolutely essential concept in the formation of human personalities and human civilizations. Environmental psychologists have quantified links between exposure to natural environments in childhood and environmental preferences later in life. Learning about surrounding environments during childhood is strongly influenced by the direct experience of playing, as well as through the role of family, culture, and community. The special bond which develops between children and their childhood environments has been called a primary landscape by human geographers. This childhood landscape forms part of an individual's identity and constitutes a key point of comparison for considering subsequent places later in life. As people move around as adults, they tend to consider new places in relation to the baseline landscape experienced during childhood. Arguably, one of the most important originators of the concept of humanistic geography was Yi-Fu Tuan. Humanistic geography is a manner of approaching within the field of human geography that seeks to put humans at the center of geography. It gives a central and active role to human awareness, human agency, human consciousness, and human creativity. And Yi-Fu Tuan also pointed out that geography, or people's sense of space and place and so on, almost always include concept of imagination. When we think about it, space is merely composed of intersections of mobile elements that are not in stasis. Things can happen in space, things happen in space that are not planned, things happen in space that are random. However, our concept of place, on the other hand, is a space that has been ordered in some way to serve some human need. A park, for instance, is a place that has been constructed in accordance with which elements are distributed in relationships of coexistence, and therefore implies an indication of stability. Space is a freedom and potential order or chaos. Placelessness or placeless landscapes are seen as those that have no special relationship to the places in which they are located. They could be anywhere: roadside strip malls, petroleum stations and convenience stores, fast food chains, and chain department stores have been cited as examples of placeless landscape elements. Having both a sense of space and place, humans eventually wanted to use their ability to move to go from one place to another place, which is what they actually began to do when humans began to migrate out of Africa. The National Geographic Human Genome Project, spearheaded by Spencer Wells, has tried to use DNA as a way of tracing the movement of human beings around the globe and how they migrated from one place to another. I highly recommend that you watch the video that I provide a link for elsewhere in this lesson to look at and see how people have moved around. One of the curious elements of the video is a moment when Spencer Wells goes out to meet what at least the DNA suggests might be a central ancestor of virtually all human beings. I think if you watch that, you'll find it to be a rather humorous moment within his sense of discovery of humans and how humans have populated the earth. Certainly one of the unique features of humans are that they can use their intellect and their superior brain capacity to basically adapt to virtually any location on Earth, any environment, any climate. For example, if we look at Eskimos, or the people who live in the northernmost part of the globe, we find that some unique genetic variations related to fat metabolism have taken place and enable them to ward off cardiovascular disease that otherwise could easily have been caused by a diet traditionally high from the blubbery seals and whales. These genetic mutations, which the researchers said arose about 20,000 years ago, help lower bad LDL cholesterol and fasting insulin levels, limit the height of the Inuit, keeping down their weight and helping them to adapt to their cold environment. Another major evolutionary event that helped create modern human beings is the loss of body hair. The loss of body hair in the hominini species is assumed to be related to the emergence of bipedalism some 5 to 7 million years ago. Bipedal hominin body hair may have disappeared gradually to allow better heat dissipation through sweating. The loss of hair also may have freed erect humans from the sorts of lice and other parasites that infest hairier animals. With the evolution of hairless skin, abundant sweat glands, and skin rich in melanin, humans could walk, run, and forage for food longer periods of time under the hot sun without brain damage due to overheating, giving them an evolutionary advantage over other species. About 1.2 million years ago, around the time of Homo ergaster, archaic human beings, including the ancestors of Homo sapiens, had exactly the same receptor proteins as modern sub-Saharan Africans. Research into the evolution of skin pigmentation seems to point to the fact that darker-skinned people have a superior barrier function in their skin, which includes protection against UVB radiation from the sun. Darker pigmented skin has a superior permeability barrier as well as a better antimicrobial barrier. In lush rainforests, however, where UVB radiation and Arctic stress were not in excess, light pigmentation would not have been nearly as detrimental. This explains why we can have the side-by-side residence of lightly pigmented and darkly pigmented people. So, the color of one's skin ends up being an adaptation to environment and to place. Of course, as people moved about, there certainly must have been narratives that occurred, and people must have acquired a sense of special place, a sense of special attachment to one place or another. But for our purposes, in the modern world, probably one of the most important accounts of travels is the Book of Marvels of the World, which was attributed to Marco Polo. It was in fact a collaboration written between 1298 and 1299, and it was a collaboration between Marco Polo and a professional writer of romances, Rostoncello of Pisa. It is believed that Polo related his memoirs orally to Rostoncello de Pisa while both were prisoners of the Genoan Republic during a war between Venice and Genoa. Rostoncello may have glamorized Polo's account and added fantastic and romantic elements that made the book a bestseller. And indeed, the book did become a bestseller. And in fact, for its era, the book sold only slightly less than the Bible. It was probably the second most popular book available to the reading public. No doubt to pique people's interest in the book and perhaps eventually in the adventure of traveling themselves, descriptions were included of truly fantastic and fanciful creatures as illustrated here. Armed with a Bible and a copy of the Travels of Marco Polo, Christopher Columbus set out to try to find a shorter and quicker way for Europe to connect with Asia and to exploit its resources and its profits. That in turn triggered a whole series of explorations by other European nations as they attempted to cash in on the possibilities of discovering and acquiring and claiming more territory for themselves. As the agents of European civilizations fanned out across the globe, they laid claim to territory and laid the foundation for commercial maritime empires, which were in competition to the older territorial empires, such as the Russian Empire, the Qing Empire, the Ottoman Empire, etc. As you can see from this map of about 1700, there was this dynamic relationship between the European nations and their growing acquisitions or claims of territory, influence, and power in various places, and the territorial empires. You can see also the white spaces, which meant that in the minds of Europeans at least, there still was considerable amount of space on the globe that hadn't been dominated, claimed, or acquired. All those empty spaces were considered by Western civilization to be wilderness. But eventually, over time, the concept of wilderness got transformed into the concept of the frontier, and that we'll talk about in a future lesson. Thank you very much for your kind attentions.